49?
49.
Still here.
Yeah.
You want to introduce it?
Yeah. So the topic that we have today, and you and I had various number of conversations about this, including some fights maybe like 3-4 years ago. And it's basically living, what it would be like to live from an open heart space. And then tangentially, the things that keep us actually away from that. And then also as an extension of that, the perspective that we can and cannot have depending on which space of self we're living from. And so it's kind of a all over the kind of like a overview summary of the topic. But
We can
the
just go.
the heart space maybe is kind of like I think we've touched on this in the podcast before, but maybe defining what we mean by heart space.
I mean, in one level, it's almost talking about living in a like a utopia, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, but Utopia, by whose standards, right?
That's the thing.
That's a loaded word.
It is a loaded word, but I guess years ago you were talking to me about, imagine a world where, like everybody loves one another and we don't need the police and we don't need military and we don't need, all these,
Judicial structures.
Yeah. Because we only need those when things go wrong. So imagine, where people live together and things don't go wrong. Did I sum that up?
Kind of, sort of.
And I'm like, yeah, but what happens when someone tries to take advantage of it? What happens when there's a crazy person? What happens when someone's bad? What happens when someone moves in? What happens? And I'm like, I'm trying to, match that description with my understanding of reality, where, I've never experienced anything like that. So how could that possibly ever exist?
That's not true.
Well, it's not true.
I've never experienced anything like that.
I've never experienced anything like that in the 3D world.
In this lifetime.
In this lifetime, sure.
Yeah. Let's clarify.
So I couldn't imagine that actually existing. And I'm like, it would be taken advantage of. It would fall apart. It would, right.
Yeah. And I guess with me, I will go back to the past of like why I was so upset about it. I had a huge, I guess, like memory dump that came into me at the time. I guess right now I realize it was a memory dump, but back then I had no idea. And I just remembered this life that is a possibility for us, like here, like where possibility for Earth forward can be this. And I actually remembered it being so already. And so it just came in, this is back when I was first trying to, like, this was way, way back. Maybe 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. But right before I even understand what this is. But the memory of it and the truth of it is so clear. It was so clear to me at the time. And anything, and so I was just telling you, like, oh my gosh, no, this is totally going to be it, or is an option. Like, this is where things are going and this is where things are going to go. And then you were like, no, and you were just arguing with, but of course back then you loved arguing with me too. And so we were just arguing for days and days and days about, and I was so triggered by it because to me, somebody's idea of not seeing this as an option, I realize now, epitomized the truth behind a human condition. Is because we choose to not see the possibility of anything other than living in our fear form, in the form of our lower chakras where we're stuck in fear. That as long as we stay in that space, we will never have this utopian type of future that I remember.
Yeah.
And so that your closed-mindedness to the aspects of this being an option was a trigger for me, because that closed-mindedness is what's actually causing this to be our reality and not what I remember
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
future.
Exactly.
And so it was just, I didn't, at the time I didn't understand it. Like I literally said, like, I cannot be married to someone who does not see this as an option. I said that to you. And Ashton looked at, I think I might have be repeating this story, but Ashton looked at us and went, "You guys are idiots." Because to me, it was the most crucial aspect of recognition that needed to take place in order for that reality to come into existence. And for you, you were simply like, okay, you're just bonkers because there's no way this is even a possibility. Just look at the world today.
Yeah.
And your point is valid and my point is valid, but at the time,
They couldn't be mated.
yeah. Well, I mean, they're still not mated. If you have now started to remember the future as well.
Yeah.
And so you're remembering aspects of this that one used to be and now are coming. But at the time, you were elsewhere. You were in the epitome of the human condition, which is the fear of the form of fear. Fear form. Yeah. Actually, it's fear of form, I think.
Afraid of the form.
Yeah, to some extent. The formal structure of the density actually is propagating the fear. Because the formal structure of our existence is perceived as set. And then we fear the presets. Like the presets actually drive the fear, and the fear is driving the preset.
Right. Because it does feel set and established and like unchangeable. And how could it be any other way?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just a
If you're in the lower chakras and you're living in that human condition,
right. That's
what you were arguing is the reality, right? If you're down there and you're barely surviving and you're in fear of all the possibilities of the future and you're still holding on to the past, and you see, well, look what we have been going through, and it's not, let's say it's not getting better, or I do think it's actually propagating towards people waking up. But if you're just in that, like, blindfolded, how the horse have the blindfolds and they just kind of see the path forward, and there's no deviation.
Right.
There's no deviation from the line.
I mean, I couldn't see it. I was like, two people can't, get along, let alone, a community or a planet, You want proof? Turn on the TV. Exhibit A.
Yeah, no, I know.
Which is not incorrect in as much as if you're living in that mode, then yeah, you can't live in the other mode. But through a shift is the right word.
Yeah, it's just a frequency shift. I mean, now I realize, all it is just a choice into the bandwidth or frequency you decide to function in. And and you and I do not want to have another podcast us talking about trauma and fear so much, but maybe again I will touch on it just because this is kind of the transition. There's a frequency of bandwidth that holds the possibility of you continue to exist and find the trauma and fear as your truth, right? I'm not saying you should just go la 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 and ignore it. You should actualize it, which is what we have talked about, let's say in the last 4 or 5 podcasts. You should actualize into the barriers that cause you to drop in there and the triggers that cause you to drop into that bandwidth. But once you recognize the triggers, the only thing you need to do is realize that the triggers is what is the cause of the drop into the frequency of fear or into that bandwidth. And so from that point, actively then basically the forward living or the forward propagation of the cyclical nature of basically your choice then goes into, I see my trigger. I see me being ticked off, or I see me being angry. I see me being scared, or I see me being, once again triggered into the trauma of my childhood or whatever it is. But then recognize, here's the trigger. But then I have a choice to go down into the bandwidth and choose that as my reality and choose this as my functionality. Or I can go, oh, look, here's a trigger. But then I can choose to almost use the trigger as a tool to bump into the heart bandwidth.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the key in the transitory phase of our awakening is you will always have the triggers, or for a while you'll have more triggers and you'll have less triggers. But as you have these triggers, the triggers can almost be as these net positives, reminders not to go lower in the frequency, but actually to bump your frequency up. It's kind of almost like a resilience builder. Does that make sense?
And as much as when you exercise, you have to, at the cellular level, you have to actually tear muscle in order to have it rebuild stronger. That's how it works.
You tearing a muscle?
Yeah, when you do like strength training, it literally tears the muscle fibers, but then they grow back stronger.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like same thing with yoga or not?
I don't know how stretching would work, but if you're any sort of like
weight building, like weight.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
And probably the same thing with like, if you're doing like endurance, running or something, the way muscles grow a handful of ways, one of which is if you put them under stress, they make little micro tears and then they grow back more and fill it in. And that's how you add muscle. There are other ways you can put them under like chemical stress, like through like, what's when your muscle burns, it's from an actual, one of those acids that your body releases that can help it too.
Not cortisol, or what is it? I don't know.
I don't think it's cortisol. Might be. I don't think so. It's folic acid, maybe.
Oh, maybe.
I don't remember.
I've heard of folic acid before.
And then you can put it under like an oxygen deprivation or something too. Anyway, beside the point. But through this through the fire, something goes stronger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing with forging steel.
Yeah. And we have, let's be honest, most of us have already experienced enough pain and trauma from the nature of our human condition going back into our lifetime, right? So the desire,
just this one lifetime's enough.
Yeah. So the desire, well, and it echoes, right? Like I can actually see it re-echoing.
Yeah, me too.
Like, we just like we heard them talking about yesterday, it just re-echoes and re-echoes and re-echoes. And actually, with me now, I'm remembering like this echo from a specific lifetime. I go, oh, look, here it goes again. I was a little boy and my human condition ended at a point of total despair for the human condition. And then thus here it is once again coming up as a point of retrospect here. And this is a trigger, right? But I can almost trace back that trigger to a multitude of lifetimes where that was the case. So it's almost, to me, it almost seems like I remember enough and I feel like I have felt enough of the human condition to go, yeah, that is not a choice I want to continue to dive into anymore. I want to actualize that is a feeling, that is a potential, that is an experience I want to have. In fact, the experience actually becomes overlooked from an interesting standpoint where you're kind of retrospecting of all the little nuances about it, but you're not in active pain, pain activation of it. You're not like drowning in it, right?
Right.
And so from that overlook standpoint, you can go, oh, look, here's an overlook, here's the trigger. But you know what? Here's a choice. Here's a different override to where I'm not diving into the depth of this. I am actually going to bump into the heart space and rewrite the narrative. You're rewriting the narrative of the pain and the trauma into what would it look like if I gave it love? If I took that trauma and I took that pain and just went, oh my gosh, look at me in my human condition. Let me give it love.
Right.
Right? Let me see it through love. Let me give everyone who is a participant in this trauma, in this drama, love. Like
right.
If there's an instigator you perceive, let me give him love, or her. I'm like stereotyping here. If there's me who's a wounded child, let me give it love. If there's a parent who I perceive as an enemy, let me give him love, right? Or if there's an abuser who I perceive as a treacherous bad guy in my lifetime, let me give him love.
Yeah, and this is not the same thing as you know, seeing a silver lining on a cloud. This is
No,
this
no,
is
no, no,
not, oh,
no.
here's a bad thing, but at least I whatever. It isn't that. It
Well,
isn't I
the
mean,
the
that
whole point of a human condition is to us to have a visceral depth of
right,
experience. So this is actually recognizing that truth.
right. Yeah. I mean, in as much as every experience we have, good and bad, there is some s- there's value in there. You know, we don't want to quote,
We
we don't
came
want
here for that experience.
the bad stuff, but it's but we that yeah, that's half the game. Half the
Yeah.
other half's the good stuff, half is the bad stuff.
Well, no,
But we learn,
the ownership, I think, gives us sovereignty into determination of what we choose to have as a future.
yeah, and the wisdom we gain out of recognizing it as that is very powerful.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I do want to acknowledge once somebody's in the depth of it and the only thing that they're doing is drowning.
Yeah.
For somebody to come up and tell you, well, guess what? This is what you came here to experience. And then your previous lifetimes are kind of like little, nitbits and cookies that made it into this. And this is the accumulation of all
Yeah.
the little
Nobody
stories.
wants to hear that.
It's hard to hear. It's hard to hear. Uh, but I think we need to start hearing that. We need to start recognizing that we are the owners of our narrative and we are the choosers of this story. Like we are writing the narrative.
Yep.
And so to me, yes, it sucks ass to hear it when you're in the depth of it, but at some point there's a click and it's extremely empowering. It is extremely empowering for me to go, oh yeah, I came here for the breadth of this experience. And yeah, so far I have been choosing to have this drama and trauma as my experience. But now I can go, oh, look, well, now I can just spend time overlooking this drama and trauma and going, isn't that interesting? Look at all these little narratives and all these little stories and all like the little tidbits of victimhood that I play and the tidbits of the bad guy and tidbits of the good guy. And you can see yourself switching characters and switching gameplays.
Yeah.
And it becomes very interesting and endearing to go, wow, really? Like to me, I almost, from some judgy standpoint, go, wow, really?
Yeah, right?
Like, there you go again. This is,
It's a soap opera.
yeah, it's a soap opera. But once you see yourself as the creator and the director and the producer of it, then you go, what an interesting choice
Right.
that I am making and continue to make.
Yeah, but then you can choose to not to.
Yeah. And so that trigger and that recognition that you are a complete owner, like 120% owner of this, then allows you to make a choice, right? You can almost have that recognition or that trigger, have a choice to go, what is going into my heart feels like. If I have been going this direction and this direction has been the human condition that I have been propagating this far, what if I choose to go the other way? What if I choose to go into higher frequency? And what does that gameplay look like there?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And start, you can almost start playing a different game. I know that's weird to say, like as far as a greater sense of awakening or greater sense of creation. A lot of people associate heart space and then functioning in that state of being as a God space. So you can almost say it's sacrilegious to say that you'll be playing a game in the spiritual space of enlightenment and all loving and love. But the game is different there. You're still playing the game, but the game is of nuance and beauty and love and joy and propagation of wholeness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so why don't you talk about how that looks?
How I remember it?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember it from multitude of spaces. Like I remember circumstances on various planets where that's interpreted in real, like, period. That is the only interpretation of that planetary system. I remember it from there. Um, but then I also remember it as the future of Earth. And I also remember it as the past of Earth, back when the original concept of Earth was set up, before the human condition was placed into Earth. So the concept of Earth that existed in that space did not have human condition from the density of our, let's say, if I call it three-dimensional space. It is actually an incorrect interpretation of it, but it did not have us as humans interpreting it. So Earth had other species, I guess. I will leave it at that. But who were already experiencing that condition. And then at some point, it just kind of took on its own little interpretation. And then, hence where we're at right now. And it took on its own interpretation, and we're now kind of climbing out of that. But yeah, so what I remember, and I'm trying to think if I'll just talk about the earthly interpretation of it and not necessarily other planets' interpretation of it. So earthly interpretation of it. Oh, okay, no, I'll say this. On the other planets, the one I'm referring to, the extent of human emotion is not there, right? So our range of, imagine the most highest high you can feel on the overflow of heart, and then the lowest low. So the condition of that, the highest high and the lowest low, gives us a huge emotional range. And so what then we do on the human scale, right, on the dimensionality, is we are able to interpret the heart space high infinitely higher than the planetary system that I'm referring to.
Do you think the fact that we have such a big range adds to the difficulty we have in reaching that? Because
Yeah.
it makes it easier for us to be super passionate about
Everything.
this or that, and super angry about this or that. And
Yeah,
them and
but here's the key. What I want to point out is this is the caveat that none of us are recognizing, but this is the key to all interpretation. Think about how passionate you can be. I don't want you to go into the space and lose yourself in it, but think about how passionate you can be about hating something or someone. Think about the depth,
right,
and the range of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And now think about how passionate you can be about loving someone or something. Right? The depth of that range is the same point.
What do you mean?
The energetic interpretation of hate and energetic interpretation of love to us seem like going into different directions, but they're the same energetic signature.
Right. I mean, I think we've said that before, that, the opposite, people think the opposite of love is hate. And it's not. The opposite of love is
I'm not even, no. What I'm saying, it's not the opposite of hate. Let me draw a concept. There you go. Take about, let's just go even simpler than that. Let's talk about like peas. How much, or green beans, I don't know. What is the vegetable that you hate? Like, think about how much vomit type of reaction do you have, let's say, towards peas. Right. So the passion, feel the energetic intake that you have regarding the hatred of peas or dislike of peas or whatever. I mean, I don't think
hatred's the wrong word. It's more disgust, but
disgust of peas. Let's say like you take a food and you're like, oh my God, I cannot even. And think about the energetic influx. So the peas it's a container. Let's say peas or green beans is a container, right? I'm picking on peas and green beans. I'm sure they're great for you, but for
I don't like peas. But then again,
I
there's
actually
a whole,
don't.
then again, there's a whole bag of trauma coming along with the peas too, which makes it
Yeah.
even more complicated.
I'm just talking about, just think
Sure.
about the emotional influx that you would have towards a concept of something that is not hatred, but like, whoa, right? Like that overflow,
Yeah.
and then you have a reaction.
When you see cat barf,
Well, I just want to vomit. That's a vomit-inducing situation for me. But so pick a concept, and then
something
think
you
about,
really, really don't like.
think you don't like, but then think about the internal influx. You go, right, and then think about like the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. I don't know, peonies and butterflies on them. Like that would be like the epitome of my thing. Like I am literally swimming in the leaves of peonies. I'm feeling the texture of the peony. I'm smelling it, and I'm just drowning in the peony. And then there are also butterflies around it. Like that's my thing. And just feel the influx of that beauty, right? It is the same origin. It is the same energy of creation that is flowing through
just
you.
like out of phase with each other.
We perceive it out of phase, but that influx, that initial influx of energy, let's say I will call it Kundalini or whatever you want to call it, that initial influx of passion, really passion, is channeled into hatred for peace or complete surrender and love into peonies. I know, right? Same energy. So the human condition is us not recognizing that it's the same energy then gets chosen into appropriation, that's the word, into the hatred or love,
right?
Into fear or love.
It's the same energy, and we just see it through a different lens. Or
yes,
fractalized, maybe.
Through the condition, the other human condition of our binary nature of operation, we then fractalize it or interpret it as
good or
bad, or hate or love or evil or angelic or whatever. But it's the same energy. And so in the changed human condition in the future, that energy flows. But because we're not in the position where we allow ourselves to drown in the fear aspects of that energy, we only propagate it forth on up, let's say. And I'm not saying up is good and down is bad. I'm just showing you that it's the same energy that flows through all creation, all beings of existence. But in our human condition, we, instead of flowing it up and interpreting it through our heart space, we flow it down and start to interpret it through the baselines of our survivals and fear and all that.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But the flow, the input is the same. And so the human condition is the choice. That is the range of interpretation that we perceive as hatred or as love. But once we separate out and start to actualize into our heart space and start to interpret everything from the love on up, right? From like that, and then on up, that range allows us greater breadth of interpretation. So like, just an example, Lyran species, or Lyran, whatever you want to call them, do not interpret that range as wide because they have the condition of it comes in as this primal energy of love. And then the love is interpreted in all aspects of love, but the depth of it is not extended as far because they have not pushed the condition out into this other realm that is now able to be filled with love. It's almost like if you have a bandwidth, right? And for Lyran, this is the bandwidth, right? And it's all love. It is all interpretation of love, and it's all they know, and it's all they know how to interpret, right? And so, but it's all encompassing, and it's all beautiful, and we almost cannot perceive this much beauty at all times because it would quite literally just overwhelm us, because we will be like, like in the euphoric utopian state of existence, and then like that All you know is ecstasy. Like, it's almost like that. All you know is ecstasy. But because of our human condition, this range, emotional range, got expanded because we tacked on this whole other interpretation
of negative
of
things.
negative set of emotions. But what it actually allowed us to do, it allowed us to expand the whole range. And so we sequenced it out into good and bad. But right now, what we're doing is the sequencing of good and bad allow us to take the range that the Lyran are very, familiar with. And they went, oh, okay, well, let's expand this range. Well, how do you expand this range? And so okay, let's design a human condition where there's more interpretation. And that more interpretation had to, within itself, have the condition of good and bad and evil and judgment and fear and scarcity, right? So we almost took this concept and we went, oh, let's grow it, but grow it through what? So we can interpret love and then bounce back into hate. And so we can interpret fear and then bounce back into love. So that basically took the concept and just basically kind of pushed it out. And the range just grew for us. And so we are the species, because of our human condition, that interpret everything so widely and so within the full breadth that it's overwhelming.
And I think I said this last episode or maybe the one before, the delta between the lowest low and the highest high is so much more than just the delta between a baseline and the highest high.
Yes.
Yeah.
But our lowest low has been interpreted thus far as us drowning, us like, I can't take this anymore. Like, I don't know what the drowning looks like for everybody, but like, this is too much. The depth of the depth is too much. The human condition is so overwhelming that some people are exiting out, and like we heard yesterday, people are saying, oh, I don't want to come back to this planet anymore because this is too hard. But it is because they're seeing this as their reality, as opposed to what they're not recognizing is they came in here to experience the expansion of the bandwidth, right? And that expansion of the bandwidth by default has the lowest lowest in order to have the highest high to be even higher, right? You're interpreting reality from the most widest breadth of potential because you're everywhere at the same time. And that everywhere is bigger than ever, right? Yeah. So human condition, if you are in the human condition, what's changing right now that has not been present before is the bandwidth of our interpretation is widening, right? But it is also unlike any other species of interpretation that there's out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think it's widening in both directions for different people?
In reality or in our interpretation of it? Like, are you talking about from the creation of the universe widening?
To me, it feels like it's widening in a quote positive sense. But
are you talking about how we perceive this bandwidth from the human condition? Or are we talking about like galactic interpretation of this?
I guess how we perceive it.
Yeah, so we perceive it as whenever now, as we are surrendering our lower pain body ways of being, and we're becoming aware of them, and we're coming into recognition of them, and we're recognizing our triggers, and we're going, oh, look, it's not a game I want to play now. I want to play a game in my heart. We're able to go into the other end of it where the highs are feeling higher.
But those people who are not doing that, do you think it's going the opposite direction?
You mean like people who are not working on processing?
Sure.
They're
Yeah.
aware?
Yeah. Do you think it's just staying as it is? I don't know. It feels like almost like the world is kind of going and almost splitting the people into people who are doing the work, label them however you want, and the people who are not. And it just, I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of anger out there, more anger now than like I could ever remember before.
Well, I mean, the only reason that anger is there is to give him opportunity to become aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the purpose. But
Are you saying those people that are angry and they're not able or understand that the anger there as like, oh, hey, here's a friendly reminder
yeah,
that you need to become aware of what is that you're actually
do you
experiencing
think their
inside?
experience is expanding into the negative in as much as other people's is expanding into the positive? Or do you think theirs is not expanding? Or do you think it's expanding in a good way?
From the galactic interpretation of human condition or you know,
The higher purpose, yeah.
the higher purpose, the bandwidth is not expanding. Like the bandwidth, the interpretation of the human condition in this bandwidth is staying the same, right? Like the bandwidth is what it is, right? I will clarify this. You know how time is expanding? You're like, well, what the heck does that mean? Does that mean, do you know what I mean? Like they say that space and time is actually growing, not growing out, but growing within. So the bandwidth is expanding within itself, but the the parameter has expanded when the human condition was created, and that's a set parameter. But we're experiencing like the nuance that grows
Okay,
within.
so it's still 0 to 100. But
Sure,
now, but it
sure.
used to be 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And now it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it gets more granular.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
a lot of more granular applications of interpretation of the same bandwidth.
Okay, that actually makes sense. That makes sense. Because it does, the highest high is still the same as the highest high ever was. But now there's like, oh, but here's something in between.
Yeah, you finding interpretations in between, like the nuance. But I hate to like narrow this down and make this as if this like some sort of goal or some sort of good versus bad, but there's so much in the nuance. What we have been missing is the nuance,
Right.
right? We can bounce really fast, but we never spend time in the depth of the nuance. And in the nuance, if you go from 10 to 20, okay, yeah. But if you go from 10 to 20 by ones or by 0.01, the extent of
10
that
was great.
condition.
10 was great. And 20 was great. But 18.35, whoo, what was that?
But it's right. When we interpret time and space, the amount of time and space it takes you to get from 10 to 20, if you expand the time and space continuum and dive into the depth of it, right? Think about right now, you and I have been talking about the time is completely crazy. Like we did something and the next day we're like,
What day
you
was
and I
that? That was
both
3
think
days
that
ago,
was
right?
3 days ago.
No, that
But
was
in fact, it
yesterday.
was just yesterday.
Yeah.
So the continuum of time and space is bending and folding and unfolding in such a nuanced way because
That might just be a symptom of exhaustion too. I'm
yeah.
just teasing.
Well, no, as you release the density of Earth, right? Because what happened in my case, we went through that day, and then there's a huge release of trapped emotion for me at the end, right? And I released it and I let it go, and I'm right now doing a lot of work on the Shakti mat in order to trigger myself. Like that's what if not trigger myself in like a vicious way, but like in a constructive way. Like doing yoga stretches and getting into positions that are triggering. And if those of you who are not familiar with Shakti mats, but they're basically
It's like a bed of nails.
yeah, a bed of nails that you lay on for I lay on it usually for 30 minutes, which is fine. And I've been doing that for like a couple of years now. So I'm used to the laying on them. But what I've been guided into doing recently is actually standing on them. So it's basically almost like your feet are walking on nails. But I'm not walking, I'm standing, which is actually much worse, but better for you. Like, so if you can get a Shakti, and they're super cheap on Amazon. So you don't have to get the Shakti brand one. I don't actually have the Shakti brand one.
Link in the description.
Yeah. And it's so just stand on it. To begin with, start laying on it. So get accustomed to laying on it and then feeling of discomfort. So the goal is you lay there.
I don't think they're that bad.
No, the back is not bad.
I don't think it feels that bad.
Oh,
I don't even think standing on it feels that bad.
Well, you have a lot of calluses on your feet.
Yeah, but I've got like 50 extra pounds pushing down too.
How about this? I had a lot of trapped energy in the bottom of my feet. So I don't know about your human condition, but that was my human condition. And so standing on the Shakti mat, within the first 2 minutes, I'm irritated. And I have those influxes, right? So the goal that I've been guided to do is to constructively irritate my triggers, to go through those impulses and like actually bring them to the surface and get irritated and sit there and try to breathe through the irritation. And all the yoga I've been doing lately too are just very irritating. Like I'm on purpose picking the yoga, various yoga exercises that have the poses on the yin style where you sit longer in the pose, right? And so that yin style yoga where the stretch is like, ooh, I need to back out of it because there's something triggering there. That is kind of like that pushing into the human condition in order to bubble up everything that needs to come up.
Yeah.
Why was I on that topic? Oh yeah, so that's the depth, right? So I am constructively doing that. I'm constructively getting into my anger and into my aggression and into my fear and into my triggers of unsafety to bring them up to the surface so that I can allow them to flow and then release them. But I guess I'm the person who does it actively and with conscious effort. Everybody else is in the same position, but they're being triggered by the world and then not realizing that.
Right. You're calling the trigger to you on purpose, and you're very aware that you're just being triggered because you're initiating it.
Yeah, I'm initiating
when
the
Bill
triggers.
at the office does something, it's not necessarily obvious that is the universe trying to trigger you. You're just pissed off.
Yeah. But think about it. Within the last 2 weeks or so we're recording this, I don't know when it will publish, but we're recording this in the beginning of August. Within the last 2 weeks, since the end of July, like 20th or so of July, until right now, so this is August 7th?
7th, I think.
Yeah, 7th. Right, the triggers, basically, since the triggers are more popping than ever. And interestingly, energy of the earth has anchored itself in such way that it allows everybody to ground right now more than ever. So the earth is actually helping us in the sense that she's taking this influx of anger and fear and she's trying to ground everyone in. So as everyone is on the tip end of hatred and fear and, I don't even have to go into the human condition of three-dimensional interpretations of that, but that's just like one of the nuances. But everyone is triggered, and the depth, like the most rooted, craziest, I will use word fucked up shit that you have experienced in your life is coming to the surface right now. The depth of that is coming up for everybody, and how it looks for everybody is different. But everyone is triggered to where the deepest, most buried things will be coming to the surface or are coming to the surface right now. And, within the next, within the next 2 or 3 days, it's going to get really bad, I think. I say really bad, really good, but that's
intense.
Intense, sure. For those,
Right.
Well, I just gooch. Yeah, and so I'm guided, okay, do as much work as possible right now in order to, in my case, constructively bring it up so then I can release the density, right? And then be able.
Come back?
Yeah.
That's right. Daddy's better.
Mommy's never the prime choice here. So right, so then you're able to be aware of the density, but then from that point on, be able to be in the heart space. If that makes sense.
It does.
Have you been triggered more?
You're saying that, and I'm like, no, and then I'm like, wait a minute, maybe yeah.
More than ever.
I don't know about more than ever, but
I say it's more than ever. But if you're been working on dealing with it, that it doesn't feel as overwhelming.
It doesn't feel as overwhelming. That's why I was like, I haven't been. But then I'm like,
but it's because it's flowing.
Things have been coming and going.
Well, yeah. So right. So for everybody else who's not doing the work, they're coming and they're staying, and the people will feel like they're drowning. And for those who have been working on it, they're coming and they're triggering, but you're becoming like, oh, okay, yeah, look, I'm just letting it flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the depth of it is flowing through, at least for me. But I do think it's not just for me. I think, I'm just kind of like a reflection of a entire human condition. My leg locked up.
Yeah. Mine's not comfortable. Plus my ankle. Like, yeah. But
Yeah, no, and so where this is leading us, as I guess as utopian prophecy goes, is leading us once we're able to release the perceived hold on the fear and the scarcity, but it really is our interpretation of everything through that lens. It's not that we're actually changing things or like erasing things. We're not doing anything. The only thing we're doing is anchoring in our interpretation of fear and scarcity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The energy comes in, and our go-to has been, oh, let's go into fear. Oh, let's go into scarcity, or let's go into whatever. But now, as it's coming up, each one of those reiterations is like, okay, we'll release that pattern. Let's go into this pattern. Let's go into this pattern. And so it's kind of like retraining us into a different pattern.
Yeah.
It's allowing us to take the same energy and start utilizing it into the heart space as opposed to into the fear space.
Yeah, to transmute it.
Not even transmuted, just decide of where we're using that energy. We're not transmuting anything. Anytime anybody does energy healing and anytime anybody does anything, like I do energy healing and whatever, but the only thing it is
You're repurposing it?
Is you are teaching this body, this soul, this human interpretation, this human condition to take the energy and then just channel it into, let's say, net good as opposed to net bad, not consciously for the purpose of humanity, for the purpose of your own interpretation.
Okay. I mean, I know what that feels like because I know, like, just through a shift in, I say a mental shift, but it's really an energetic shift. You can completely change how you feel about. And it's not just how you feel emotionally; it's just how you feel. I don't even know what the word is. Energetically isn't even the right word, but it's the same. It's the same energy. It's the same trigger. It's the same, circumstances. But you can go from just awful to amazing, just like that.
About the same condition.
About the same condition.
Yes, but that is what's happening. The ascension of Earth or ascension of our humanity or whatever it is not anything other than the choice into recognition of how we choose to channel this same energy.
Yeah.
And we have missed that. We have, through our binary sequencing, we have taken everything and we have categorized as good and bad, as like, oh, lower chakras are bad and higher chakras are good. And, you don't want to be stuck in pain and suffering. And so like, it's almost like this thing that you need to rid of. And then, but you want love and light. And so there's this thing that you're striving towards. So the concepts are valid, but the approach to us as far as the recognition into the sovereign choice that we have, all of it is a human condition, right?
Yeah.
All of it is the experience of self that we're having. There is no such thing as good and bad. The question is, what do you do with things as they come forth? And how do you utilize the energy?
Right. It's not like, oh, in a perfect world, you can just slice off those bottom 3 chakras. That's not it. That's not the solution.
Well, no, a lot of healers talk about energy being trapped in chakras. And that's true to some extent in the sense that energy of trauma is trapped and is held in certain vibratory frequency, and each chakra represents a vibratory frequency. And if this vibratory frequency is just fixated on a concept, right, that's where the energy is taken up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you are at, I don't know, 100 hertz or whatever. I'm just throwing a number out. And then 100 hertz just has within it, victimhood, right? Victimhood, fear of I'm going to be used, I'm going to be utilized. I can't trust people. I am, I can't trust the universe. I can't trust the world. And that is that is what's holding density, meaning that is what you're holding as your truth, then as the energy comes into your form, because it is an active kind of like a magnetism that is just pulsating, it will just go straight there and it will just feed that 100 hertz over and over and over, right?
Yeah, but the fear has, I mean, that has to do with safety, which is, down here in, I don't know, 1, 2, and 3.
That's what I mean. But because it is active and pulsating, right? Through the propagation of natural laws of energy, it will go to the source that is calling its name.
Right.
Right. The energy comes in and it can be interpreted in any bandwidth, right? As far as the energy of our creation comes in, and then as it fractalizes itself into the bandwidth, it's at your disposal.
Yeah.
And if your disposal is like calling it right here, going, oh, by the way, over here, come over here, then it's you calling you. Why would you not go to yourself?
Yeah.
And so you just go to yourself, and yourself is currently going, oh, hey, I'm right here. I'm a victim. The world is, out to get me.
But but if you feel the opposite, if you feel, empowered and, and sovereign and, whatever the opposite of victimhood is, then your, I guess, solar plexus probably would feel that. And so that is what it would resonate with. So it's not like, I guess it's just chakras out of balance to a degree.
To a degree, right? So the teachings to a degree are all correct. We just, at least I have been interpreting them in the weird way. I have been interpreting them in way of a human condition. And so it's really strange because, now my interpretation of the same thing has this different lens on it. And I go, yeah, it's technically right, but we have not been, it's all like we have in a way misinterpreting the truth. Like the truth is the truth, but we're like looking at it through a strange lens. Yeah. So, so the second you take your flow, your own individualized flow, your own sovereignty, and you decide to put that into the heart space, as opposed to like over there in the victimhood waveland, you still have the entire scale of the human condition, which is magical, right? This is what we're here for, is to have this depth of experience. But you can start interpreting it into this nuance, right? Instead of, because over here, you're jumping by tens and you're drowning in the tens. But over here, you start having this whole range, that same range, interpreted through the nuance of a heart space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe, I'm trying to think. If we can like can you go into the space of the heart range? And then let's talk about actually like how you see things or how things flow. I know that's where we're supposed to be, but I was just trying to interpret how do you get there. And then I think what will happen to the podcast is like the energy of the podcast will change. And so whoever's actually listening to it right now will actually be able to experience the heart and up band, or the band of an upgraded frequency where you're utilizing the whole range through the heart space as opposed to utilizing the whole range through the fear.
Okay.
I'm asking you if you can do, like, is that something you can do or not?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just go into the memory of the place that you remember. And I think it will do that. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
I mean, it feels good. It feels, I don't know how to describe. To me, it almost feels like a botanical garden.
It is,
and it's like, I like
botanically.
botanical gardens and all, but that's not like, ooh, it's a botanical garden. But this is like a special botanical garden. Right, because I'm like, I can go to a botanical garden, now and then, but it's not, I'm going to go spend my life there. But there's something about, it's almost, botanical garden combined with, the Avatar world or something is how it feels. I can't even describe it.
If so, here's what happened.
It's very luscious. It's very green and luscious somehow.
Yeah, but I guess I'll describe it. What happened when we take the heart energy, right, and we try to express the full bandwidth of it, right, and we are trying to interpret it in all the nuances. Because think about it: if you take the whole possibility of this space, and then your goal in life is to express it and experience it, just like our human condition is. I'm not going to go into that energy, but just how our human condition is to experience and express it in the full depth of its being. And that is the only energy that holds potential. The depth in which you dive into beauty with fruit, with vegetables, with fauna and flora, with greenery, with cooking, with craftsmanship, with design, with
Other people.
with creation of spaces, with creations of cities, with creations of rivers and lakes and mountains. That full bandwidth that we have trapped in, let's say, the places that I will not go into right now, has that energy only going to the full potential of the prime directive, which is expression of love.
Right. I mean, imagine a time when you've done something that normally you would like, but you were not in a good place, and you did it for the wrong reason. You were in a bad mood, and you were angry, and you had to do it, and whatever it is, and maybe the end result came together, maybe it didn't, but that doesn't matter. But just imagine the experience of doing that, and then imagine a different time when you did something maybe similar, that you were into it, it was flowing, you were resonating with it. You know, it's completely different because you're in a higher resonance with that activity.
Yeah, but I want to caveat, even if you're doing something and it's not going well, it can still be interpreted through the energy of love,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The
Yeah,
fact
yeah.
that it goes well or not is irrelevant. I'm talking about your personal experience in doing it, the way you feel doing it is just so vastly different.
But think about, if we take the energy that we have, that is our human condition, the full breadth of energy that we have, and we insert it solely into the prime directive of expressions of love, right? Like Lyran structures of living basically exist around that. Their interpretation of life is to take the energy, this energy of the source, which is basically the facilitation of them as the expression into this world, and channel that into the breath of beauty um, that they can have. Now, since then it has been modified, due to the whole, history. And I'm not going to dive into the history because I myself is not as familiar with like their condition, now past in time and space or whatever. But the original Lyran energy is what I'm talking about, like the anchored in energy of where, all right, like it's like the human condition has a prime directive, and then Lyran condition has a prime directive, and their prime directive, it was just the depth of that expression. And so yeah, so the reason why the gardens are beautiful, and the reason why the flora and fauna is living in harmony, and it's the most beautiful thing you see, and love is just all that is. There's no possibility for anything else, is because we have learned to take our energy, our full potential, and actually channel it into the expression of our desire, that is heart space. As opposed to, in the past, we have been taking that energy and choosing to channel it into the depth of our desire, that is our, survival and fear.
Right. I mean, I think everybody knows what it feels like to take fear or anger or something and use that to fuel
It's
something.
very powerful.
And it works.
No, it's extremely
You can
powerful.
use it.
I
you
mean,
can take
most of us survive their entire life on it.
yeah, you can take fear and use that to power fuel your work or your relationships or whatever. It's not that it doesn't quote work, but you're not going to get the same results. I don't think it's you're bringing something different to the table in
Y-
that.
Yeah, in my book, they said that past at some point they said that the past reiteration of humanity, but in my book they reference it to it like your past generations, but they actually mean it bigger than that. They mean past reiterations of human condition. Their goal was to actually go into the depth of the human condition. That is the fear, that is the pain, that is the loss. Just think about how real it is. Think about how real it is to be in that space. And then,
It's all consuming.
but it's all so real and it's all so visceral and it's all so true.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
you
it's
can't even perceive it not to be something that
right.
it's not true.
It's the only thing that matters.
Yes. And so their goal, hundreds, thousands, through thousands of years was to experience the depth of that, like just live the most visceral life and this understanding of pain, this understanding of fear, this understanding of scarcity of, the lifetime I keep on referencing of myself as a boy in the Middle East, like such a despair about the human condition to where you actually think the human condition is in despair. Right now, a lot of people think the human condition is in despair. Back when I experienced that, whenever I was, most of the people who are drowning right now think there's no, they actually believe that there's no way out of this. They're so in it that it's not even worth it forward because it's so painful.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that is their depth of a human condition. They're experiencing that deep of a human condition. I guess the only question that they have to ask themselves is, do I want to exit out with that belief? Or is my reincarnation into this life something that allows me to actually
Right.
see it for what it is as opposed to drown in it?
And that's the choice.
Yeah, great. But in there, the choice is in our future, and then also in the lifetimes, the lifetimes that I can remember, their choices. They don't have the choice of fear, and they don't have the choice of drowning and being lost in it. But their breadth of expression is only into the depth of beauty. So, I mean, in a sense, I could say this as a brushstroke. Imagine if you lived in a world where you did not have to take energy of your human soul and channel it into survival and working 9 to 5 and basically barely making ends meet. If all of those things were taken care of, and the only thing you had to do, quite literally, like you're not afraid that somebody's going to rob you. You're not afraid someone's going to shoot you. You're not afraid that, whatever will happen in a political situation. Like that doesn't even enter into your blank of possibilities. And the only thing you have to do with your life is like, oh, hey, how do I express beauty? Like, what do I feel that is beautiful today? And how do I express this?
Like literally, literally everything except the very top of Maslow's pyramid is taken care of.
Everything is just imagine a world where everything is taken care of. There's not even a concept or idea of this could go away. This is your permanent baseline. There's nothing outside of I'm here to experience beauty. What does beauty look like today? Does beauty look like today me laying on the couch reading a book and doing absolutely nothing? Is that beauty? Yes. Does beauty lay there me sitting in front of the tree and just staring at it all day long? That's fine too. Does beauty just look like me like sewing or quilting or knitting and then expressing that? Is me painting? Is it me gardening? Is it me tending to animals? Is it me staring at flowers all day? Like,
Watching Survivor.
well, Survivor will not exist because the only reason Survivor exists is because we're drowning in our pain. Right? Here's I will get slightly political here, but there will be no need for television and all the stupid shows that we watch, because the only thing that they are there to propagate is our awareness of our pain body or the propagation into our pain body, which is the same thing as our awareness of our pain body. The whole purpose of all content, all television content, like shows and survival and reality TV shows, is for us to either further drown in it and get lost, or to realize that we're drowning in it and get lost.
What about like educational content?
If educational content is propagating the frequency of heart space, and
I guess I've seen educational content that does, and I've seen stuff that doesn't.
Yeah, right. Like, I guess it depends what you're talking about.
Right.
I mean, there's educational content on this is how you garden.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure.
Right. This is how you
here's a skill.
Instill balance in the soil. This is how you balance the soil without chemicals. This is how you tend to bees. This is how you allow, what is it? The hanging gardens of Babylon? Is that what it was?
Mm.
Right. What do you think? Where do you think that came from? They're beings who were tending the gardens, right? And we're frequency beings of pure interpretations of heart space, right? And so that is it for them. For them, their expression of self is the garden. But the garden is not just a plant. It's not just the vine hanging down, right? It is a living being. And so their expression of self is, I am a living creature and I'm a living being, and I'm communicating and transversing my energy with another being. And so the way you have creative flow happened and you amplify that nuance is you interpret your energy of love through a different entity of love. And in this case, the entity of love is a living species of a plant, right? Why the plants are so popular right now. Like right now, plants are even more than Corona time, like at all times high, is because we're recognizing that they're alive. And we're recognizing, oh, heck, if I'm actually communicating with them and I'm in symbiotic relationship with my energy and their energy, I am expressing energetic interpretation of my different reality.
And you can like, you think there's like the sense of like accomplishment that comes along with it too? Or is that too 3D of a?
Yeah, the accomplishment is not a thing. You feel satisfied. Accomplishment, if you interpret an accomplishment from the pain body, that's different. But there's a sense of satisfaction.
That's what I meant.
That there's satisfaction. It is meeting of self, of your energetic self, with an energy of someone else. I mean, this is going to get personal, but this is why I feel so lonely on Earth, right? Is because I interpret my physicality through an energetic meeting of self with somebody else's energy of self, and no one else interprets their existence through the energy of self. Does that make sense?
Elaborate.
If you're living in your heart space, right, and then you go up higher, what you're aware of is your existence as an energetic being. This form, my form, doesn't, right? Like I have been disconnected from my form for a long time, not through what is the trauma expression of that? Dissociation, not through dissociation, right? When I told you that to begin with, you're like, oh, well, you're just dissociating. Well, no, I'm not. It is because I see the form as a vehicle for interpretation of my energetic form. And so what I see forefront within my being, for the most part, if I'm not drowning in my 3D space, is myself as an energetic form. And so thus, my only desire as an expression of my being is to interpret myself in my energetic form. And then the most closest I can feel to another being is when they are interpreting themselves in their energetic form, and then our two energies can come together and commingle.
Okay.
So plant care is basically that, right? It is kind of almost easier because the plants cannot talk to you. And so you're not actually getting any kind of validation of this interchange. The plant is an energetic being. And then if you're an energetic being, you are an energy and they're an energy, and you come through and you have an energetic interpretation of your interaction on the heart space frequency and then higher. You almost ascend dimensionality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so my human condition, this is what I'm realizing that my problem has been all of my life is I am only interpreting myself through an energetic interchange. And then the reason why I'm so unable to connect to the rest of the world is because no one else is. I'm sure there's somebody out there, right? So yeah.
But that's what the Utopia looks like when everyone's to that level.
Yeah. Right. So I'm lonely because what I remember and what I see and what I know, for good or bad. I mean, I think it's good because then I can hold that frequency for Earth, and then everybody around me kind of basically goes into their version of chaos, because that's basically what I do. Not in a bad way. I say this.
Agent of chaos.
In some way, right? Because what is it that I do is I come in into any situation and I'm able to read the energetic frequency. I see where your stuck points are. And then if you're in my life, chances are I now realize you're ready to release those stuck points. And then I will trigger, for the good or for the bad, something within you that will cause you to change. And so a lot of people then come into my life, and if they're aware that this is what they're needing, they will be open to what I'm doing, and they will actually receive that conversion. No, not conversion. Coversion. There's a word that they're trying to get me to use that I'm not able to come up with right now. Not cohesion. Like when somebody's forced.
Coercion.
Yeah. What?
Coercion.
Yes. That is not a word that is part of my vocabulary, but that is the correct word that they want me to use. Right. So that is what I do, but sometimes unbeknownst to the human condition of a soul, not of a soul, of a three-dimensional interpretation. Right. But the higher self is there because they're ready. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know that, like, I'm not trying to justify all the things that I do as like, oh no, I can do whatever I want because of that. No, it's very, like, I still have a really hard time determining my boundaries around that, right? But wait, what was I saying? Yeah. So yes. So that is what Utopia is you're an energetic form, and you interpret yourself as an energetic form, regardless of the physical form that you're actually deciding to take on. Hence, a lot of the extraterrestrial forms that are not in physical form in any way, because the truth is we're just energy, and then we're just determined to interpret this as a, whatever this reality happens to be. But you can be in any form. And so that in Utopia, if you go back to those, hanging gardens, right, are when you go back into the form that you're interpreting in them, is it a human form? Yes or no?
It feels more like an ideal human form.
Yeah, meaning
it's not like
it is
Bill in the Office human form.
But it's a
idealized,
somewhat malleable, energetic interpretation of a human form. Like the outline is there. And the idea that this is a form is there, but it's not a solid being.
I always thought, there's the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and one of them is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. I'm like, those must have been some gardens to be one of the 7, on par with the pyramids, as far as, wonders of the world. That must have been something.
Well, what it represented was the leftover of the past that was the last remnants
I,
of interpreting energy.
I almost pictured it as some sort of like, modern is the wrong word because it's obviously ancient, but reimagined Garden of Eden type of thing.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know.
Why do you draw a religious context to it?
Because they both have the word garden in them. There's
Yeah.
no great reason. I just imagine it being this, and I don't know. I mean, I've seen like a drawing, which is just someone else's idea of what it looked like. I'm sure,
No, but
but
I guess maybe the question to pose here is to anyone who's listening: how many of you have memory of the ancient gardens of Babylon or something like it? I'd say it's not the ancient gardens of Babylon, but basically that concept as a possibility. And what does energy feel like there? And then the truth is, why does that exist? And why does it not exist right now?
right,
Right? If that is something that we're familiar with, I'm very familiar with that concept. But the reason why I'm familiar with that concept is because I can dive into the energy that made it possible. Right? That again, going back to the beginning of the podcast, when you and I were arguing about this utopian society where there is no jails and there is no judicial systems and no one's occupied doing bullshit work for the sake of bullshit work. That's what we're doing, right? Think about all the policemen, all the military, all the lawyers, all the governmental
right.
officials, all the doctors, garbage men, construction workers,
Cybersecurity people.
cybersecurity, marketing people. Like, think about the number of positions right now that exist
Unless you're being creatively productive, there's no need for you for your
all the
position.
time.
Right.
All the time. If you are out there,
Yeah.
plunging toilets at your house because, there's a stop somewhere along the sewer line, you're not 100% there. And I know I'm extrapolating the concepts, but imagine a world where all of your energy, and I mean all of your energy, is used towards the propagation of what you feel in your heart, period. Because you do not have to utilize your energetic resources or anything else.
And anything less than that.
Just the only thing you're responsible for is feel what's in your heart and do that. I hope it's not murder and rape. But do you know what I mean? Like, if you're in your heart,
right.
I joke about murder and rape because it will not be there.
Right.
There's this symbiotic relationship that becomes on board, that comes in on board, and you can feel your essence and oneness with everything. So the idea of harm, like, cannot even exist as a possibility. Like, when I was arguing that with you back then, and I know right now you'll be able to tell the difference. Like, that is not even a concept that would even come into that space.
Right.
The idea that you have to watch somebody else because they might do something wrong by you or by anyone else is not even a thing, because you are energy and somebody else's energy, and there's no concept of harm because you're all one energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't make sense. We don't see that right now. Through our binary split, we don't see that the harm that we do upon others is actually harm that we do upon ourselves. And I don't mean that from the biblical standpoint. I actually mean that literally. Like, quite literally, we're unable to do anything forward that will not be done unto us because it's same energy. We're of one source. There's no separation. We are fractalized and we believe that there's separation, but it's all one source.
Yeah. No, that's become very, very obvious.
And so sooner or later, we will catch on, not out of fear, like, oh shit, I shouldn't do bad things to other people because it's bad upon me. That is the wrong place. I'm actually literally saying there's one energy.
Yeah.
There's just one energy. You're not doing it out of fear. You're not doing it out of this understanding that
what else could there be?
There's this love.
Right. It's like I'm, someone who's a quote good Christian But really, it's because they're afraid of going to hell,
Yeah.
or worse, afraid of looking bad in front of everybody else.
Yeah, but that's just part of
Yeah.
Christianism at this point.
Or there's, you're a good Christian because you really believe in the good word and the positive messages.
Yeah. Yeah, but let's be honest. When you go into the heart space, are you a good Christian? When you go into space of heart, the space we're talking about, if you take everything away and you go into that heart space, what's there?
I mean, I could imagine someone that could be, but it's probably closer to a Gnostic type thing than it is
It's not Christianity.
than closer to Gnostic than it is
Yeah,
modern
Gnostic
Christianity.
is scenes
Sure,
Qumran energy.
but you know what I mean. It's the is it coming from fear or is it coming from love?
Okay, yeah. So if you're referring to Christians as Gnostics and Essenes,
Yeah, maybe that wasn't a great example.
yeah. But any religion deviation that puts boxes and definitions around things cannot exist here. There's no boxes. Like by default, why I'm struggling to be on this planet is because everything is designated into boxes of appropriation. And so everything is appropriated into a category. And as long as everything is appropriated into the category and it's in the binaries of ones and zeros, we're not in truth. And hence we're not able to have an honest relationship with ourselves, much less with anyone around us, because we're just binary frequencying ourselves out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you get uncomfortable about this because then you go into some sort of fear spiral of like, oh my God,
No.
I know.
No.
It seems like you have some kind of energy that comes. I can feel you have some sort of things that comes in that you have a response to.
I don't know.
Something to explore.
I was thinking I wish I'd picked a better example than Christianity. I'm not sure I can come up with a better example.
No, but but that thought is coming out of the closed binary sequencing, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess.
The reason why you wish you picked a better example is because then there's something that would be better to say in order to, I don't know whatever the ... paint body is. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, with me, I don't know. I'm not going to go into me. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, that it comes from that space. It comes from that open interpretation of you as energy. And then, that is why whenever we go to like a spiritual workshop or like whenever we held cacao ceremonies, and that is my intent is, for the most part, my intent is to go into that space. You come almost feeling euphoric afterwards.
Yeah.
Is because for the short period of time, if something does go right, if a workshop is good, if the some coaching session is good, or the therapy session or go to a healing session is good, you spend just a little bit of time of being in that space where like ideas of density and binary sequencing is not even an option.
Yeah.
And then you touch on this euphoric utopia.
You feel this potential.
Yeah. And you're like, the angels are literally singing and you're like, ah, and you just don't want to even leave that space. And you almost want to hold on to it for as long as possible. But that is the space in which you're touching on that unlimited flow that basically has your energy come in, and you're only putting it here. And then your heavens are singing. You're like Jesus's aura, Jesus's glow, right? Is that the ascension of Jesus, is the heart space is so open and so activated that then he literally fucking glows. And then that's, you see in the Buddhist end, you see the glow go down here because it is all encompassing. Because from the bandwidth standpoint, I will kind of deviate, but that is because the heart energy then emulates all of this, and then by default that encompasses all of that. So your lower chakra energy is then being used for amplification and facilitation of this space and not down here. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I'm saying the same thing as like opening your heart, but I'm trying to reword it in just the right specific way to allow someone to see the difference between the truth and then what we have come to believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think what we've come to believe is a little
Skewed.
It's skewed. And this is another question that I ask. I think it's the knowledge has always been there, but then it has purposely been skewed and misinterpreted and not obscured enough. And no one was actually clarifying the details in order to allow us to exist in this space of binary expansion.
I mean, I think it has been misappropriated for, to consolidate power and money and whatever too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, from the three-dimensional standpoint, yes, but because we needed to dive into the depth of our experience in the what is it like to take this energy and go into the point where it is not a pure expression of heart. We needed to have that space. We wanted to have that space. The power would not be allowed to exist if we did not choose to surrender our power away. Do you know what I mean? We cannot say that somebody has a negative agenda because in somebody's own one negative agenda does not work unless you're giving up your power. So I want to bring the responsibility onto an individual being. The only reason anything exists in the world is because somebody has given it enough power to be the case.
Yes, yes.
But if it's big enough, then that somebody is a lot of somebodies.
Yeah.
But the second we have the energy come in, we go, wait, where am I actually giving my power to? Where am I surrendering my power to? And do I want to give the power to this? Right? If you take, I hope they don't get angry at me for saying this, but if you take your power and you go, oh, I will just surrender it to all aspects of Christianity, and your particular flavor of Christianity happens to be shitty ass and is being utilized for the wrong reasons, then that is still your decision.
Yeah.
Right? If your flavor of Christianity is condemning anything that is not them, then that is your choice.
Yeah.
That is your surrender of energy into this particular interpretation and flavor of Kool-Aid.
Yes.
So nothing can exist. Nothing negative can exist, if I put definitions on negative, that we are not feeding ourselves.
No, I mean, I agree with that. No, I mean, I agree that, nothing negative exists unless you're at least partially creating it.
No, it's not. There's no partial. It's 100% your responsibility.
Are you responsible for some of the negative things in the world?
If I'm participating
If
in
you're
them,
participating in it. Yeah. If you're
yeah,
participating.
I'm saying
yeah.
you are actively participating in the propagation of something.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not like, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, participation is surrender of your energy.
Yeah. By choice.
By choice. Right? So, whenever we're watching Survivor, I don't even know if Survivor still exists. We've been joking about Survivor for 20 years now.
Now it's Love Island.
Whatever. Right? Whenever you're watching some reality TV show and the whole point of that reality TV show is to propagate chaos, either pretend or real, it doesn't matter, right? Our life is technically all pretend. It's a Shakespearean drama that we're designing, just like Love Island is the Shakespearean drama that somebody else is designing and it happens to have, a producer and a director and a budget and cameras. But it's all the same. The energy is all the same, regardless of how many level separations you can draw from it. So if you're choosing to partake in the energy of the Love Island and you dive into the concepts of it, then by default, you're responsible for its existence.
Yes.
But I want to point out, it is that crucial.
Yeah.
You are responsible for the chaos that is the Love Island.
Right.
You are not the bystanders on TV sitting on your couch, shoving, chips and nachos down your throat enjoying this. You are responsible for
Right.
that energy.
All right. Would it still, all right, if you cut it out of your life, would it still, quote, exist in the world? Yeah, probably, but it wouldn't exist in your world.
But
Right?
that's how things exist.
Yeah.
Like your world is the reality.
Right. Love Island does not exist in my world.
Well, I mean, it does now.
It exists on Earth, but it is not in my world, other than as a topic in this conversation.
Yeah, but I guess to step up higher, not only have we fallen victim to our own blindness of our own propagation of negativity, we have fallen victim to the blindness of us participating of negativity in other people's gameplays.
Yeah, I think that's gotten bigger.
Yes. We're
And
surrendering our sovereignty to our own self-recognition, right? That has been the propagation of Earth and human condition for a long time now. But what's more evident now is now we're surrendering our sovereignty into everybody else's propagation of human condition.
Our own drama is too much, so we can distract ourselves with other people's real or fake drama.
Yeah, but our propagation of that blindness is like global now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like because we're global now. Right?
Yeah. Now
Like,
there's 8 billion different people that we can get lost in their drama.
Yeah. To some extent it's actually good because the more, to some sense, the more, this is not a reason to stay blind, but basically the more you dive into the drama and the more triggers you have, the more likely your soul is bringing in a message to you into awareness, right? So you can look at the Love Island and you go, wait, look here, Billy Bob is over there with Sally, and then I don't know, and then Sally does something with Billy Joe, and then now there's a love triangle and it's triggering me. I don't know. Right. But
I assume that's what happens on Love Island. But it happens on an island.
So they can't escape from it.
They can't escape from it.
But that's the reality of human situation. You are trapped in this form.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of parallels. But right. So that guilty pleasure of diving into somebody else's drama with you only exists because within you there's something that is causing you to want to dive into the chaos of someone else.
Right.
Because you're trying to separate the pain out of you and go, oh, look, Billy Bob is an asshole. That poor Sally, and you see yourself as Sally, and Billy Bob's an asshole, and Billy Joel over there is better. I don't know. And he's the knight in a shining armor that's going to rescue Sally from Billy Bob. Whatever.
I've gotten confused. This plot is intriguing.
But what I'm saying is, instead of us seeing that trauma and pain within us, we will connect to the characters in the gameplay.
That's back to projection.
Yes. And hence, so from the positive standpoint, you can take Love Island and you can actually use it as a tool to become aware.
You could watch it and go, ooh, that's triggering me. What just happened? What in me
yes.
is that?
Yes. So, when George Lucas designed Star Wars and when
Joseph Campbell?
Tolkien did Lord of the Rings, right? Both of them had this idea of how do I bring in the human condition and the deeper search for meaning within the acknowledgement of our deeper truth, our own, let's say, evils, right? And how do I open that and become aware of it? How do I bring up the depth of me? In George Lucas's case and in Tolkien's case, it is like the hidden, the hidden bad guy within us is what he epitomized or processed as the trauma and the pain. But that was their narrative. Is instead of taking trauma and pain and making this nebulous thing, they put a character on it, and it's like the dark, your dark self, right? When Frodo got lost to the dark self, what is it? Well, it's the pain, body, and trauma that that I'm talking about, that was Frodo's dark side, right? And Luke's dark side that literally called him to the dark side, right? Was George Lucas's interpretation of the hidden trauma and pain.
Right. I mean, that George Lucas famously, consulted with Joseph Campbell to help weave the hero's journey into it.
Yeah, but
Well, that is the canonical story of all stories.
What you and I talk about in every single podcast is the hero's journey. The hero's journey is, oh, I come here, I'm lost and confused. Fuck, what's happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
You dive into the lost and confused. You fight your own demons within during the lost and confused. And at some point you go, oh, wait, I am like in charge of all this bullshit. I should become aware of that and then like start like realizing what is it that I do that holds responsibility, right? At some point that becomes aware. It's Harry Potter, same thing, right? Why is this so successful? And then you're like, oh, look, I am responsible for this bullshit of a story. Then I should make a choice forward that is not this story, that is a different story. And then you like rewrite your own story. And then you save your own self from your own self by making that decision. And then hence, then you go into the heart space where you are able to reach greater version of you. That is your utopian interpretation of reality.
And you repeat.
If you choose to. I mean, in their senses, you repeat over and over and over because there is a microcycle within the larger cycle. But what we are facing right now is the ability to recognize the micros and congeal them into one big cycle. And then once the one big cycle ends, which is what the precipice verse is right now, is we have an opportunity to end all the micros and enter into one big cycle while the micros get interpreted and then transmuted, if you want to use that word, into energy of this on up, where you actually level up.
I think the last phase of the journey is that the hero brings the wisdom back and shares it with his village or his tribe, the world or whatever, too. Maybe a parallel there.
To what?
To, sharing the knowledge, helping everyone else along.
Yeah, do you think that's what you and I do now? We're heroes, sharing the knowledge.
We're heroes.
Is that how you feel about yourself?
I feel like a hero.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing we can do with our human condition is to learn from it and then, pass this knowledge on in order to have someone become aware earlier.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that we started this podcast with this.
That's the goal.
I mean, when you think you're going through hell, your goal is to spare your children and your future descendants, and then hopefully people around you from that perspective.
Right.
That's the initial trigger. But then sooner or later, when you realize that, oh no, hell is actually just the reality of my interpretation of myself, right? You're still continuing to do the same thing. We're still continuing to share our personal journey.
Yeah.
But I guess this is not like a pompous thing to say, but in my case is because I have memory of something else.
Right. It's, yes, we want to spare the children from the hell of whatever specific life circumstances. And I guess, that may not necessarily go away, but then it becomes, oh, I want to spare the kids from the hell of deciding that this is a hell.
Yeah.
And,
well, we lose our sovereignty. We have lost our sovereignty.
Yeah, and giving away my power to the hell to make it a hell.
To myself. You're giving power away to yourself that interprets it in this way versus that way.
Right.
And then we forgot that every single millisecond we have the choice to interpret anything the way we want.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the human condition, is the forgetting that we can interpret everything any way we want. So it's kind of beautiful in some way. So yeah. So I guess to wrap it up, utopia is out there. I don't think the goal is utopia. Like, that is not what the goal is. But if anyone is confused about where things are going, that is where the propagation is going, right? So you are being pushed to shed and to let go and to reinterpret your choices. And then for those who are meant to make the choice into heart space energy and start raising the cyclical nature of Earth to the raised energy of the heart space. And then, cumulatively, we will start rewriting the narrative forward if there is such thing as forward, right? Yeah. But I guess maybe to clarify, the journey now is not the goal of Utopia forward, is the recognition of
Your
this
own,
choice
yeah, of the choice to
to
your own,
where you utilize your energy, where you place your energy into.
yeah, which is your own personal utopia, or at least not your own personal hell.
Yeah. Maybe recognition that the personal hell is a choice that you're propagating on minute by minute basis, right? And so what we will be going through as Earth in the next, few cycles is that practice between, you have the energy coming through, where are you putting it? Where are you putting it? Where are you putting it? And it's that reinforcement of that decision that we have to be vigilant about right now.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.